What's up guys, welcome back to a brand new All Balls how-to install video. Today we're going to be installing brand new Japanese crank bearings from All Balls into this 2003 CR250 bottom end. We'll go ahead and take a look at the kit you need to do this job yourself, as well as all the tools. So let's dive into it. Alright guys, when it comes time to do your engine rebuild, one of these All Balls crank bearing and crank seal kits is going to come in quite handy for you. Let's go ahead and see what's inside first, and I'll tell you why I like it. So first of all, crank seals. That's nice to get in the kit, as well as crank bearings, as mentioned. Now the very first reason I like this kit, I think you're going to like it too, Japanese crank bearings. A lot of you guys are very concerned about the bearing quality, where they come from. Coiled Japanese bearings. Also lightly oiled, so you're not going to receive them with any sort of corrosion on them. Very cool. Of course, getting the seals is also a nice bonus. You don't need to track down an OEM parts microfiche, buy two bearings separately, buy two seals separately. This is all in one kit. Not to mention, this kit, I want to say, is about half the cost of the OEM parts. So that's really nice. Get it in one kit, don't have to hunt, half the price. Also Japanese. I've been using these with great success on many of our bike builds for customers and giveaway dirt bikes, and no complaints. I'd also like to mention that when you receive your kit, everything inside will also be in individual baggies, not open like this. I wanted to make sure you could get a really good look at them. So now that we know what comes inside one of these All Balls crank bearing and crank seal kits, let's jump into the tools. All right, first on the tool list, not really a tool, your engine, whichever engine you may have. In our case, 2003 CR250. Now the first thing we're going to do is get those cases nice and hot. And here we have a small hot plate. You can find these on Amazon, wherever else you might like to shop. It's just one way to do this job. Essentially, we will be laying an engine case half on this hot plate, getting it hot so the aluminum can expand. Meanwhile, our bearings are going to be in the freezer, contracting and becoming smaller. Now, your service manual, OEM service manual, may recommend some other methods, some other tools. This just works so great, and it's very easy. So I wanted to show this to you guys today. Of course, no wrong answers, and do it whichever way you feel comfortable. Now to install our bearings, we're going to have a set of inside retaining ring pliers. Of course, as you can see, when I place these pliers into the bearing, they expand this way so I can grab the inner race. These are going to be key. We have a small brass punch for those stubborn bearings just in case, as well as a small hammer to tap the brass punch. Brass is going to be a lot softer than the steel on these bearings in the event we need to use this, so it will not mar the bearing or destroy the bearing, which would be terrible, right? We just paid our hard-earned money for it, and we want the job to go smooth. So those are some just-in-case options. Something else you may want to use, a seal driver kit. Now, you can get these from just about anywhere. I think I've had this since I was a kid. It was a super cheap Pittsburgh brand seal driver. It's worked amazing for this kind of stuff. So it may be cheap. A lot of you guys will be on board with that, but it does get the job done. It will work not only for having a flush surface to tap some bearings in that may be stubborn when we're in the heat phase, and also you can install your seals with it, of course. Now, when you're installing your crank seals, we're going to use some optional 1211 made by 3Bond. You can use whatever your manufacturer recommends. It's basically a chemical safe sealant, and this is just going to help us out in the event that we were trying to protect from any breaches around seals, especially if your cases have some dugout marks in the seal races themselves, or seal bores rather, inside your cases. We'll get to it. Never hurts to have some shop towels and some contact cleaner or brake cleaner around, just to keep your workspace clean, your tools clean, your hands clean between installations. So grab whatever you like. And then one of the last things here, we've just got some oven mitts. I actually stole these from my wife. Don't tell her. When we're handling the hot cases, these are going to come in very handy. You can also use a landscaping glove, thick leather, a welding glove. In my case, thanks babe. So now that we have every single thing we need, and maybe a little more, let's go ahead and get to work. One thing I didn't mention, guys, wear some gloves. All right, here we are. We've moved everything over to our engine table where we do some building, get everything nice and clean. What I've done first is segregated the left and right case half bearings, something you guys might want to consider doing, especially if you're new. Like I said, some of this stuff is directional and goes into a specific spot. So this just really helps with the left-right engine cases. Next step, I'm gonna go ahead and get these into the shop freezer and get them chilling. After that, we're going to go ahead and fire up our burners so we can stick one of our case halves on it. In this case, we're going to do the right side case half first. Get it right there in the middle best we can. Now, a good rule of thumb in terms of is this case hot enough yet or not is if you can drip a little bit of water onto the case and you get a sizzle, that sucker's ready to go. So while we are waiting for that to heat up, it's going to take a little bit. We're going to go ahead and get all of our tools and my wife's oven mitts ready. Grab that sucker when the time comes. We've got our retaining ring pliers, we've got our brass punch, and we've got our little hammer for some love taps just in case. All right, we're ready to go, guys. If you are not using a little wooden engine stand, use a wooden table, use a engine stand that holds your engine up on pegs, whatever it is. You don't want to smash these in on a steel surface if you can help it. All right, guys, we've got our bearings out of the freezer. They're nice and cold. They're ready to go. The cases are nice and hot. They should drop right in with ease. As mentioned earlier, I'm going to be installing the transmission bearings right now as well. The procedure is the same, but if you'd like to see what actually comes in that kit and what you're going to get, check out our other how-to video. Here we go, crank bearing install. We've got our hot case off the hot plate onto our nice soft wooden blocks. We're going to go ahead and get our inside retaining ring pliers. Grab our crank bearing like so. I'm going to go ahead and drop it flat on the table. I know you can't see it, and get a new purchase or grab with my pliers so that I know this was square from having been laid on the table. Excuse me. Drop it in, and you're done. You guys can see that bearing was nice and chilled, so therefore it was contracted. The case was heated up, therefore it had expanded. We did not have to use our brass punch. That's a picture perfect install. All balls makes the kit. You have the skills. Guys, anyone can do this. There's nothing special about me. There we go. There we go. Done deal. So now with all of our bearings installed, and this thing is of course still excruciatingly hot, we're gonna go ahead and sit this on the concrete floor in the shop. Use something similar or just set it aside, but the concrete is going to act like a heat sink and it's gonna suck all that heat out of this case and cool it off more quickly. Okay, now that our case is cooled down enough for us to actually touch it, it's time to install your crank seals. These are going to come in the crank bearing kit from All Balls. As you can see in this case, two very, very different sizes. It's pretty dang obvious who lives where, for example, but sometimes it's not. And sometimes when you think you're putting it in the right way, you might not be. For example, flat side out on most models, the Suzuki calls for cup side out. So interesting, just keep an eye on it. We're going to use a seal driver to install these and some of the 1211 that I mentioned earlier. Now, to get a little more in depth on this, if, for example, a previous owner, because it would never be you, took one of these seals out, and I've done this before, with a seal puller and the sharp side contacted the bore or the wall where the seal lives, then this would act as a great agent to seal that scathed area and also just help keep things from leaking or breaching. So you can use 1211, you can use whatever your manufacturer recommends. In some cases they want you to use grease, maybe not in this particular location. Sometimes they want you to use a little bit of thread locker, Suzuki water pump seal for example, but in this case today, getting a little off track, crank seals, we're going to use some 1211. We're also going to jump into our seal driver. This one, barely too small. It would probably work, but we're going to go ahead and jump to a larger size. It's also important to note that smaller seals like this, you can absolutely destroy them if your seal driver has some sort of bolt on the other side, or if the seal were any smaller, it could really be a problem. This one just barely fits this bolt head, so keep an eye on that as well. You don't want to ruin a brand new seal. Try a different size there. Just about right. I have good contact around this entire shoulder here. Get that swapped out. All right, we've got the next size seal driver on there. It's ready to go. Now we're going to jump to the 1211, but first, clean your hands. Don't want to contaminate anything. Get any dirt or grease in the 1211 back in your engine. Of course, that's no good. And sometimes with sealants, when you pop the cap off of them, your tube may be completely frozen and you need a new one, but also it has a tendency to dry out along the top edge there, and so you might get a little booger or a hard piece in there, which I just took out. So get that out of the way first. That way you don't get a headache on your hands. Now we're going to take our seal in the 1211, just get a little dab. Smear this stuff all the way around. Take your time. You certainly also do not want to get it inside the cup side of your seal. So again, a little bit goes a long way. With the 1211, it sort of self-levels. If you use a little bit too much, it's just going to pile up. Once we drive this seal in, you'll be able to wipe it off super easy. That's another really great feature of this stuff, is that it's so easy to clean. It's not like some other silicones or sealants that make a mess. So we're all dressed and ready to go. We're going to lay that in there. Clean your hands again. Brake cleaner, contact cleaner, whatever you like. Go ahead and take your seal driver. Get you guys a little closer there. Take your seal driver and try and start that seal by hand. It doesn't take much. And try and keep it as square as possible. This 1211 is also going to help get that seal moving, which is nice. Kind of like a grease would. And we're pretty well set, but now we want to make sure that the seal is flush with that shoulder or the casting there. So we're going to go ahead and grab a rubber mallet. Sorry to throw an extra tool at you guys. This hammer is actually just fine. Out of habit, I like the rubber mallet, so curveball. Nice. You can actually tell I've got sort of a witness mark by that 1211 kiss all the way around that thing. Get your rag, shop towel, whatever, and just wipe away the excess. It actually looks really cool too when you're done. It's like, dang, I did a good job. There's this nice little reveal of 1211 all the way around the edge. Very, very clean. And there you have it. She's nice and flush. You got that little ring of 1211 all the way around. That's why it's not a huge deal. So you have a little extra on there. You can just wipe it away. And if you don't put enough, then you kind of have spotty little peaks and valleys in that finished 1211 sealant edge there. So another thing to note, a lot of bikes blow up because the crank bearings do not receive good enough lubrication because someone took the seal and stuffed it in too far. For example, this oiling hole here, the two-stroke, you guys all know that you pre-mix into your fuel so that that can lubricate specifically this chamber here, crank bearings, piston wrist pin, etc. So if you stuff this seal in too far, you will block that hole. And I've opened a couple that have been stuffed in too far, the seal stuffed in too far, covering that hole at least partially. The bearing very dry, very worn out, and it's not fun for that to happen when you're flying through the air. Trust me, I've been there. Anyhow, that's how you do it, and that's what it looks like when you're done. I had to short you guys by doing transmission bearings in one case, crank bearings in another, to split this video up. So I'm going to go ahead and give you one more crank seal install. Alright, we've got our final crank seal of our All Balls crank bearing kit. A little more 1211. Let's see if I can get you guys the up close and personal view on this particular one. We're just greasing this thing up again, just like the other one. Same old thing. Let's go ahead, send this guy home again. Cup side is in on the Honda. And when we get our seal driver, as mentioned earlier, the seal might be so small, the inner diameter, that your seal driver's bolt or whatever fastens the collet, or seal driver cup itself, whatever you prefer to call it, to the handle might damage it. You can actually just get rid of the bolt and just make sure you manually hold this thing on. This will work just fine for us still. All right, a little hand pressure, get it started, and I pretty much felt that one contact metal straight away. So I've got to use my finger. I don't have the retaining screw on there. There's another little reveal, some witness marks, and that one's flush. I'm not going to need to give it any Rubber mallet love taps. Just gonna wipe this stuff away. And that, my friends, is a completed crank bearing and crank seal install. You can see there's a little low spot in my 1211, right about there. I could have piled it on a little bit thicker so it had a more even 1211 reveal, sealant reveal around the edge, but nevertheless, it's all installed. It's gonna hold great, and that's a wrap on this job. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found it informative. That is a wrap on the All Balls crank bearing and crank seal kit. As you can see, like I said, it's all in one kit. You don't have to go hunting around. It's very affordable, dropped in easy, no problems, Japanese quality. If this job intimidates you, just know that we were all there at some point in time, myself included. Once you've done it a couple times and you've built up a little tool arsenal, you're pretty much good to go. And also, don't forget to check out the transmission bearing video, install video that we did for you as well. Anyways, I think you'll enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching, and we will catch you in the next how-to video.